Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Robocop. It's the remake or reboot, if you prefer, of the 1987 Paul Verhoeven film of the same name. The Omni Corporation, who is trying to find a way to get robots to patrol the streets in America the way they are patrolling the streets apparently around the world and making things very safe. But because of a bill, which I think is called the Dreyfus Bill, they can't let robots patrol the streets. They have to have humans, and so they need a way to put a sexy twist on their robots so that people will get behind it, a human twist. And then they try to combine man and machine. After Alex Murphy is hurt very badly in a car bomb that was set for him by some villains, he is then transformed into Robocop. He can go out and give the company a good name, but he is also trying to find his way with this new body and kind of find his place with his family and his emotions and not feel like a horrible freak at the same time, while the Omnicorp is successfully trying to make lots and lots of money. The Verhoeven sci-fi films, the three sci-fi films he made that were very satirical and very big cultural hits and financial hits as well, which would be Robocop, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers. At this point, we've remade two of them, the latest being this film. But the thing with Verhoeven films is, on the surface, they feel very silly, they feel very comic. If you were to remake it, you do kind of the Christopher Nolan approach to it and make it more serious, more emotional, more character development. Let's get into his psyche and all those things. And I think that is a terrible idea, because you're completely missing the point. Thinking that the original Robocop was a silly, stupid, corny movie from the 80s that totally doesn't work nowadays is kind of the problem with their attempt at making this film. Obviously, it was started at a corporate level. The whole interpretation of it seems like a whole idea made in an executive room based on ideas from Chris Nolan's Batman, with the sexy, tactical look, just like Batman's Tumblr in not the blog, you know, the car he has in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. This film is trying to be very serious and matter-of-fact, and that's just something that would have made Robocop silly and stupid and not have lived on as long as it does. They don't really understand that the reason Robocop was a big deal was because it was fun. And sure, the story of Robocop, the character of Murphy, is very serious in that film. To do such a matter-of-fact, serious tone film without as much satire, it takes out a lot of the reason that Robocop was such a special film in the first place. I don't think they should do an exact replica of the original, but they had really no reason to remake it. And I was thinking about it as the remake got closer to its release date. I thought about, there are actual ways you could plausibly remake it, and remake it very well. Put it in a different city, have it be more about what's going on now in the media. This film doesn't seem to get into that. It's not interested in being a modern remake of Robocop. It kind of is, but in kind of the worst sense of the word, by giving him like a cool black suit, which for some reason his suit to me looks like the Phantom of the Paradise got really into laser tag. There's not many things about the media and how media is different, certainly a lot now than it was in '87. You could really take advantage of that. And it kind of does some Fox News things with Samuel L. Jackson, which felt like extremely overcast, so they could just put another big name in the trailer. Why not get like someone actually from Fox News? Was Shepard Smith that busy? I don't really understand. It's like you're kind of ruining your point by having Samuel L. Jackson play Bill O'Reilly. Even the elements of that it was in Detroit felt like almost an afterthought. It probably was shot in Vancouver or something. It did. I mean, not that the first one wasn't shot in Detroit either, but I believed it was made in Detroit so much. This just looked like Anytown, USA. It was just like the lifeless big budget version of the Robocop story with odd references and callbacks, which I still don't exactly understand why so many remakes nowadays feel like you should do that. It's interesting when you think of other reboots, like the recent Star Trek films. Those were made because they wanted to get new fans into it and older fans who had left the franchise. And the thing about Robocop is no one wanted this remake. The fans of Robocop were fine with the first film. I kind of don't know why they didn't make just a Robocop 4, since there's never actually been a decent enough sequel in this franchise. If you couldn't get the fans of the actual property on board, what is the point in making it? I mean, why the fuck should I care about this? I don't get the impression they never really thought about the audience. This is like an odd mainstream movie that isn't audience friendly. Most of the audience I saw it with was kind of impatient. A couple people brought their kids, which I don't know if I agree with that, but the kids were getting really impatient during a lot of it, and frankly, I agreed with them, because it just really couldn't hold my attention. It just would do all these boring, like, so-called character development, but it was really misplaced. It didn't really have a point of view for most of it. It didn't really have a focus to it. And then a lot of the changes just felt like a shitty Hollywood idea. If Verhoeven hadn't been directing it, what they would have done to Robocop. Change his partner to Michael K. Williams instead of a woman. Lewis is now a man. It just felt like a total departure from everything that made the original special. They changed and made it traditional. And it's like, well then, why am I interested in it? It's like you made me a BLT and took out the lettuce and the tomato and I just have bacon. And in theory, sure, I like bacon. Just because you have newer special effects and a newer suit and cooler blow-up things, it just didn't make it any better. The PG-13 thing actually didn't really bother me. It didn't really occur to me while I was watching it. After I was done, I was like, well, that's kind of the least of this film's problems. I hear people defending it. I've read a lot of defensive pieces about this. You know, there's worse remakes, and certainly like the Old Boy remake and the Total Recall remake were a lot worse. And this isn't to that level, but it's so kind of misplaced and messy. It's a lot closer to those than it is an actual good movie. There are actual good remakes. When I think of a good remake, it's a film that took the original's idea and did something new with it, or twisted it, or, you know, Magnificent Seven I always think of as probably one of the best ideas for a remake, because they take the idea of Seven Samurai and turn it into a Western. That's changing the idea. So it's almost a different original idea. The weird thing about this movie is the original Robocop had a lot of ideas. It has Christ imagery, it has satire, it has kind of a nihilism about it, it has a bleak worldview, and this film tries to care, which doesn't really work for itself. Then this reality felt like kind of like soap opera-y. I liked his family more as an abstract concept. I liked it focusing more on the genre-ness of it. And this tries to make it out like it's trying to be a little more like serious in tone. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing with Omnicorp. I mean, it's like, I like that Michael Keaton and Gary Oldman had scenes together, not just because of the Batman references I could make, but also because they're two actors I generally like fairly well. It's like he's supposed to be, what, like a Steve Jobs type, but what are you even saying with that? Yes, what you've done is taken the executives from the original who were very Reagan era and maybe making these more like Obama era, but not really doing anything with it. You're not saying anything about the times, whereas the original Robocop is. And it's interesting that in the original Robocop, and this is the only kind of interesting theory thing I came up with even from watching it, is in the original, he's a man who loses his memory through technology, and he has no choice through technology, and he has no voice at the beginning through technology. He's controlled by a corporation. But in this film, he's manipulated by a corporation, and he feels like he has free will. He has the illusion of free will. And I think that says a lot about our view of technology then and now. We are semi-present, but we're not really. You could really read into a lot of that looking at the different interpretations of the Robocop character. But I don't have that connection with the Joel Kinnaman, who was from The Killing, and I thought he was a lot more charismatic in that TV show. He's an alright actor, but he just didn't have the leading man quality to kind of lead a big picture like this, and especially a character like Robocop. It would have been interesting if he did have a different interpretation, and I think I would have accepted that, but it was so blandly and flat and like too subtle, frankly. Robocop's not a subtle character. You know, even in this interpretation, he's not a subtle character, but he's giving a subtle performance anyway. Robocop was a movie that said something about the 80s. And this film, all this film shows me is that big corporate expensive Hollywood movies of 2014 suck just as bad as they ever did. And like, what's the point in that? Why even defend this movie? It's such a waste of energy to do it, because it's just so bleh. Certainly this film will always live in the shadow of a much better film that I will watch many, many more times, and I'll never, ever, ever, ever watch this film. And, you know, I probably was never really going to like it. But it was just so boring. Even the action sequences weren't great. And it kind of just fell for the trick of Verhoeven, is that you really just thought Robocop was just a silly, stupid idea in a stupid movie when it was really saying more. And this film felt like it needed to add all this like character and humanity to something that actually had a lot more humanity than I think they really realized, and even stripped out all of the differences that made that film so unique in the first place. So, I mean, if you really wanted to see a Robocop film that was less unique, less original, and less funny, I guess this film delivers on all of that. Just another forgettable remake. Maybe it's not as bad as Old Boy and Total Recall, but I mean, you know, that's like, would you rather get kicked in the face or kicked in the stomach? So if you have seen Robocop and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.